Yo, what's going on? It's someone that's no one here, and welcome back to another story. Today we'll be going into my first time ever trying wax, which this happened shortly after my first time trying kava kava, and I guess I do consider this also to be a part of the Chapter 1 playlist, but it wasn't necessarily planned out that way. I'll explain that as we get into this. I highly recommend checking out other prior stories so you can get an idea of where I was at this point in my life, some of the people I was involved with, and all that. But let's waste no more time and dive right into this. So like I said, this happened after the story of my first time trying kava kava, which if you remember, I tried it alone, then with my good buddy Evan, who I considered to be my drug partner at the time. This took place a few days after, pretty randomly too, as it was in the middle of the week. But another opportunity to try something new popped up, and for Evan, it was something he's been waiting to get into for a while at this point. Evan hit me up saying that his plug had gotten dabs, or wax, whatever you want to call it. And I'm guessing most of you know what wax is, but if you don't, it's a concentrated form of THC, usually lying upwards of at least 60% plus, the highest getting up to the 90s. Compared to your normal bud, which will lie around 20%-ish, it comes to be a much different high. Now there is another video I want to reference here, where it's me basically going into how smoking weed pretty much changed my life. And I would say for the better mostly, but it isn't without its cons. But that video is a smoke sesh titled, How Life Changed When I Became a Stoner. To keep it short, I ended up falling in love with weed when Evan put me on. So to say the least, I was feeling really excited about trying this wax. Now going into this, I had only smoked a couple days before with Evan, and that's it. You could say I had a bit of a tolerance though. It wasn't that long ago when I greened out from pretty much smoking an ounce from the first time I tried MDMA, keep in mind. Now the day of this was pretty much like any other day. We handled business during the day and left the late end for smoking. I didn't know what to expect really other than to be blasted off. Evan picked up some bud to smoke with it, and it just so happened that the plug had some sour OG, one of my favorites, definitely in my top 5. Now I didn't really know it at the time, and I don't think Evan knew either, but we thought it was pretty casual to just stuff the wax in a blunt and smoke it. At least, I definitely didn't know that most people just drop a little bit at a time, a small dab's worth. That's why they call it dabs. But before going into this, Evan told me that's what we would end up doing, since we were just weed smokers and just smoked blunts normally and didn't have a rig and all that. And when I told people about this afterwards, they just thought I was wild for this. But let's set this story up. So Evan and I talked about this very briefly, and it was definitely some in-the-moment type shit. It was late when he came around, like 10 or so. He scooped me up, and we went to pick up the wax. On a whim, we randomly decided to just pull up to our friend's house, Marcel's, a name you may recognize. Now we didn't even tell this guy about it or nothing until afterwards. We just figured his house and the area was a decent one to pull up in, chill at, and smoke. When we got there, the neighborhood pretty much seemed asleep, and we got to business. Evan and I took a better look at the wax, and it was somewhat a brighter orange from what I remember. Can't say I know what the strain was or anything, but from what I can tell looking back on it, it was some solid wax. Kinda oily, but not super sticky. Like it wasn't a bitch getting off the paper by any means. We just had to gradually gather it with a knife. Of course I let Evan roll this, as I hadn't even really started rolling like that at this point. And to roll it with wax was a new challenge in itself. Now I've done this after, and it isn't the most difficult thing to do. Thankfully Evan chose what I think is the easiest way to do it, which is just to spread the wax out on the blunt, then roll the weed in. I know some people who try putting the wax on the weed, which I'm sure you can get it to work that way, but overall I feel like that process is just a lot more messier, and it leaves you with less control for a good roll. But Evan gets it rolled after a few, and we spark up around 11. He had to be up early the next day for work, I remember, so the plan was to smoke and he would drop me off. Now smoking this thing would come to be a challenge, because one of the biggest things I remember from this night is the intense amount of coughing both Evan and I went through, on top of having really bad dry eyes. Like before this I've had my eyes watery, but a simple wipe here and there would take care of the issue. With this, it was like every hit smacked the fuck out of you, and what are you going to expect with a gram of wax in the blunt? And it was our first time smoking wax ever, keep in mind. I remember just right away, I can tell that this was going to be on another level. Just a few hits, and I felt blasted off right away. I remember just thinking, man, we got a whole ass blunt of this to smoke? Holy shit. Then the car got way more boxed than it normally would with any other blunt. Like, the thing about smoking wax out of a blunt like that, I just felt like the smoke was thicker, if that makes sense. Somewhat more compact in a way. And when you think about hitting wax, you normally only need a little bit for a decent amount of smoke. So you can only imagine what the full gram did. And because of this, it felt like we were in an ocean of smoke. This didn't help with our dry eyes at all. We didn't break the box though, as we never really were fans of that. And this blunt lasted a while too. I completely lost track of time, and I just remember the night feeling like a movie. The blunt had to have lasted at least 40 minutes though, if not longer. But I'll tell you that it was just a battle smoking that thing, and boy did we get zooted. I remember Evan put on Lil Wayne, and we were just zoned as fuck as we smoked through that. And because of all of the physical complications from smoking that, it didn't really hit me how high I was until we finished it. Comparably, I would say this high was very similar to like your first time having a really strong edible or something. Just completely rattling my expectations at the time for how high you can feel with cannabis. Like, I have no idea where my mental state went. I mean, it was pretty much just stoned as fuck, I would say. Same thing with Evan, as I don't really remember us talking about much after the high came on. Once we had finished, we cleared the box and got some air. And just the feeling and seeing the night gave me way more perspective to how high I was. This was very quasi-psychedelic in a way. I don't want to say out of body by any means, but my spatial awareness was just very colorfully active at the time. And as Evan drove, I just got way more into that and just getting lost into the moment. But Marcel didn't live far from me, so we were at my crib in about 5 minutes. We peace out and I go inside. The first and only thing on my mind at the time was food. I felt like I could just smash the hell out of whatever. And at this point, I felt like I was on automatic mode. I made a meal, put on some shows, and chilled out, getting locked into my chair. After I engulfed my meal, the last thing I remember is a strong pull of sedation and me just jumping in my bed, and I was out like a light. Like I was asleep instantly, barely being awake for the high for only like an hour. I woke up the next day and remember feeling like my head and body were very residual of the high, but feeling really well rested. Evan told me that he got some good ass sleep from it and went into work chilling. And we both admitted that this was probably the highest we've ever been off just THC and bud, at this point at least. It was a fun night, and even though it wasn't an orthodox way to be introduced into wax, I still am happy it went the way it did. Even now, putting a gram of wax in a blunt like that would be considered very daring. Most people wouldn't even think of smoking wax like that. Which, I agree, going dab by dab will get the job done just fine for you, and it's going to last you a whole lot longer. So we're going to end it there today. This wax pretty much did KO us, and interestingly enough, the next day was the first time we actually did 1P LSD for the first time. So in a way, this experience did play a role in the set for that experience. I'd highly recommend checking it out if you haven't already. But other than that, if you did like today's video, like the video for me, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, follow the socials, share the video, send in a report, NoOneSubmitReport@gmail.com. Any requests down below in the comments, let me know. It's been someone that's no one, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.